everybody. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us to our first panel discussion, this time dedicated to battery metals. During this session, we will navigate through the past, the present, and the future of this industry. Please let me introduce you to our lovely speakers today. First of all, we have Belinda Labat, CEO and Director of Lomico Metals. Hello, Belinda.
Good day, everyone.
Then we have Roberto Garcia Martinez, as CEO and member of the board of Battery Metals. Hello, Roberto.
Hello. Hello, colleagues.
Following that, we have Martin Steinbild, Managing Director of Steinbild Consulting. Hello, Martin.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And last but not least, Dr. Tony Harwood, Founder, President, and CEO of Montero Mining Exploration. Hello, Martin.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for being part of this event. This event is meant to have a bit of an educational background on something that we are listening to almost every day, at least in my environment. What are the battery metals? And I'd like to kick off with this question. What are these battery metals and materials as well that we hear about in the environment? Anybody wants to start?
Well, maybe I'll kick that one off, Paloma. So the battery metals, I actually like to think of them a little bit more broadly in terms of the strategic critical minerals. And Europe, Canada, the United States has identified a list of 31 minerals, depending on the jurisdiction, that are deemed critical to the renewable energy future that we share to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and also to technology needs in general. So they're needed for electric vehicles, but also for military use and cancer research and all kinds of technologies. The battery metals are also deemed to be important from a geopolitical perspective because we've essentially relied on the source of those and the origin of those materials to come through the African continent and some place in South America as well through China. So from a Canadian perspective and an American, it's very important to start looking at localizing those sources and that point of origin for those battery metals. You'll find all kinds of battery metals on the list: graphite, lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, manganese, the rare earths. I won't list them all, but that's I would encourage everyone who doesn't know to go and find out and certainly look at what's intriguing to them.
Excellent. Thank you, Belinda. And I want to continue maybe a follow-up question on this. I first got to hear about lithium. I was already working in the mining industry, but 2014 was the first time that I heard of lithium. Was working for a client in Argentina. Why are we talking about them so much, and why is it important to recognize these battery metals? Roberto, maybe we can.
Yeah, obviously, why it's important to recognize that is just, as Belinda just mentioned it a couple of seconds ago. I believe that the people in general doesn't recognize or has not been recognized the mining industry, and especially the battery metals, until a year ago. And it's very sad that we have to see that through a war in the world where we live now, people realize how important is battery metals and how important is the mining industry in general. Without battery metals, without mining, doesn't exist the life and the world that we are just living every day. Belinda just mentioned it, hundreds of other, 1,000, many examples, but I just want to highlight something. People in general think that battery metals or mining industry is something that they don't fix with them, or that they are not part of that. But I've always make an example of fluoride, which is one metal that people are using probably the first time every day when they get up and they brush their teeth. that is fluoride there, and that is a metal, a mineral that we need to have a healthy teeth. And people, they don't realize that they are used already from the first moment in their lives, and that is just going through the day. Just when you put the light on in your house, so that when you touch a glass or when you cook, it's many metals and many minerals in our lives. And I believe people has realized how important are metals and how important is minerals since, and unfortunately not a lot of time ago. But things are changing. I believe mining industry is a hot industry at the moment. It's a hot investment opportunity also, we have to say. And I believe this sentence, we don't want our mines in the back of our yard, this mentality is changed, Paloma.
Excellent. Thank you for your point of view. Sonia, I'd like to hear you. You and I have known of each other for a while. At first, I think I met you through African assets that you had. What's your opinion on this, and how is Africa maybe playing part on this?
Well, listen, I just like to just get to understand some fundamentals here. Battery metals. I mean, what are batteries? Batteries are our instruments that we use, materials that we use, that we manufacture to store electrical energy. And electrical energy is the clean route that the globe or the world is looking to go. So electrification of vehicles, and therefore almost the eradication, if possible, of hydrocarbons and carbon type based fuels. So due to global warming, there's a big pressure on governments and on people to go electric, and batteries are used to store that electric. Now, very simply, energy can be produced by wind power, it can be produced by solar and various other means, and that power has to be, in many cases, stored, and it's stored in batteries. And those batteries can be huge batteries for a solar farm, or they can be small batteries, smaller batteries in vehicles, which need to be to feed the vehicle to move it forward. And then, even smaller in your cell phones and all your electrical devices that we have at home. So fundamentally, that's what a battery is for, and it's important in our society. So we've had two things which have been going on at the moment. So one has been the pandemic that we've had. So it's almost as if a lot of things have fallen asleep, because of lack of work and lack of movement and lack of dynamism in various economies. But at the same time, it's given a lot of people food for thought in terms of where the planet is going and how it's heating up, and you've seen all these congresses happening in recent times. So there's been a big pressure from government and people to electrify. Therefore, there's been quite a demand for batteries, and I suppose the main battery minerals and metals are lithium, perhaps, and nickel and cobalt. There's plentiful of supplies of nickel. You need a pretty pure form of nickel, but the real hinge point is lithium, because lithium seems to be an almost irreplaceable metal in terms of a battery. It produces a very good long life battery, as we've seen in various adverts. So that's lithium. Cobalt is a special. It's not found in many places in high grade in the world, and it's usually found in places like Central Africa, where it's there's the politics of Central Africa, concerns of mining in Central Africa are well documented, and there's obviously a strategic concern from the globe and various industries and industrial nations in terms of supply of cobalt, and trying to secure it, and also trying to secure supply of lithium. Lithium is mainly found in South America, Australia, Africa, and in China. There's also with high prices of lithium, we'd be looking, elsewhere. So various lithium deposits you'll find pretty much in every country on the planet. And the fundamental business of lithium exploration and mining is actually to find something which will eventually be mined in the future. So there's a lot of, typically in the exploration world, a lot of rhetoric about, the different types of lithium deposits and how good your lithium deposit is, and which different companies have. But fundamentally, they follow the same rules as any mining operation. It's got to be obviously it's got to be sustainable. In first, ESG is important, but it's got to have a high grade, a good metallurgy, and basically low cost of production, because the industrialized nations and in the industries around the world are looking for low cost inputs into their batteries. So if you can produce lithium at a low cost, then you're going to secure lots of sales, and you're going to secure project finance for moving your lithium project forward. Cobalt, likewise, is a bit more strategic because it's mainly found in DRC and in Zambia, but there's many cobalt deposits found around the world, but not in such great abundance as in Central Africa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the overall view. My perspective as an exploration geologist and a mine developer on lithium and the battery metals.
Really good background story there to continue with the next topic. You did mention obviously the DRC, and you did mention ESG, and I think is a very important topic in today's mining industry. So I like that to be the second point of discussion today. And actually yesterday I was reading Battery Global Alliance. They were talking about ESG passports on the commodities. So I also heard about ESG certificates. What's your opinion on them? And perhaps, Roberto, I think that you are well positioned to answer this comment.
Yes, hot topic. ESG is getting more and more weight when it's come to the exploitation of the part of in the mining in every single mining project. I have been in many investors meetings in the last months, and I have to say that everyone is talking about the ESG. Everyone wants to be part of this green transaction or in this responsible and sustainable mining industry, but we don't have clear standards for what is an ESG certification or ESG passport. I have to say that for investors at the moment, is even more important not the environmental and not the governance. I believe the social aspect of the mining projects is getting more attention for investors. How companies are acting with the communities, especially as Tony mentioned it, mining. We have to clear divide mining in underdevelopment countries like in South America or Africa. I have, as you know, Paloma, a wide experience living and working 15 years in Africa. And we have to separate clearly how mining is doing in these countries and how it's doing probably where Belinda is living in Canada. So this ESG aspect of the certification or standards is quite difficult to make at the same level in many countries or in many continents. The European Union is working very hard on that aspect. IRMA organization, the IRMA in the United States, is working on that. I believe that it will come, an ESG certificate, but it will not come soon. I also believe that we are 4 companies here today, and I strongly believe that the commodity price will be very soon be not unified. So every single company, probably 5-7 years, will sell their products based on a standard of a full or some points to be fulfilled, and ESG will be part of that. And I believe that when a company can fulfill ESG and other points, it will sell their products in a different price than it will sell a company maybe mining in South America or the Congo. And I have been talking to experts in the stock exchange market, and for example, in the case of gold, clearly said that when a gold is produced in a responsible way, because I don't like it to use sustainable in the mining industry or the green mining. I don't believe in green mining. I believe in responsible mining. But when gold will be mined in responsible way, I believe that the end consumers and the potential off-takers, they will pay more money from that gold, because the end consumers are ready to pay more money when they know that the raw materials, I make it in a responsible way. And for example, I have the case, and Tony just mentioned something that is very interesting, but I'm not 100% sure about it. From one side, we have here a very complex topic. For one side, yes, it is important, or there is a lot of miners or a lot of consumers or the off-takers are pushing the price for the commodity of the raw materials to be as low as possible with lithium or other materials. But on the other side, we have end consumers that are requesting high standard of mining for the products. And we have a typical example in the electrical vehicles when, for example, and I don't want to mention today any car manufacturer here, but we know that 70% of the cobalt worldwide come from one country. And as Tony said, we know how is the political situation on that countries with corruption, with children work, etc. But no one wants to drive an electrical car that is made by child labor. And I believe that these consumers, these end consumers, these buyers from cars, they will start to demand more sustainable and responsible mining to supply these raw materials complying with high standards. And I believe it's a trend that, yes, price plays a big role here, definitely. But I have, for example, my company has made a survey into European countries where we are based, and it was very interesting to see the result that people are ready to pay more money for a car, for example, if they know that the raw materials are mined in a sustainable way. And I believe that is the start of a lot of things that will be changed in the mining industry.
Excellent. I think that
Paloma, I believe Belinda wanted to say something.
yeah, I was going to go to Belinda because I could see, she was agreeing or not. Belinda, what's your view on that?
Yeah, what a great question. I love what you're saying, Roberto, about the S in the ESG, and I'll be even more forward on. I think that ESG is really very nice to talk about, but the energy transition that we're in is a disruptive time. There is no doubt that what we need to do is pay for our lack of investment. Yeah. And forget about ESG. To pay for that lack of investment, you need capital to invest in upstream exploration and development companies. And that capital, especially the one that is talking the loudest about ESG, is not investing in upstream. Who is investing in upstream exploration and development companies are retail investors, individuals, the proponents of the project, myself in my own company. So what we're missing is a realization that ESG is something that is great for large companies to talk about progress, but it cannot pay for the energy transition. There was an article that came out in the Globe and Mail the other day that suggested that Canada wasn't really doing very well in its in the league table of critical minerals countries. We were recently ranked number 2, so just behind China and over the United States for our critical minerals strategy. And this article suggested that that's not true. We don't have the reserves. The reserves for graphite are in Turkey or in other countries, and we have no reserves in Canada. But the other side of that is that 70% of the graphite projects are being developed in Canada. So the only way to get from a resource to a reserve is hard dollars. It's not flow-through spending that we have here in Canada. It's hard institutional investor dollars to accelerate. So to do that, in my mind, going back to the question, ESG is not something I talk about. I rarely talk about. What I do talk about is job creation, community impact, the tax dollars that will go into communities to create the jobs of the future. And I also like to talk to the young people who have really actually a very healthy respect for the technology they use. They're not against mining or industrial projects. In fact, they're keen. This is their future. So I think we need to go back to corporate purpose and values and job creation. And the responsible operator protocol is so much more important. Companies like ours at L'Amico with a 10 million market cap today in a bear market, we will not be subscribing to the 10 or more initiatives that are out there for your compliance on ESG. We do not have the resources to do that. Even when we did Eco-Logo in Quebec, and this is a really nice example, we are an Eco-Logo third-party certified exploration company from a Quebec designed program. And one of the things they requested was that when we do our drilling, and we had a great 13,000 meter drill program this summer, that we use a organic biodegradable oil in the drill rigs that we were using. Well, let me tell you, that was a $60,000 investment approximately. And when you're a small company and you are, you have a tight budget to go from what everybody else is used to using to a new product that was impacting the performance of those drill rigs, it's a big investment. And we did that. We did what we were supposed to do, but that's just one small example. So ESG is not the focus for us. What is the focus is job creation, community impact, speaking early and authentically with First Nations. And that to me is what I think the ESG funds are missing, because they are not investing upstream in companies that have this purpose. And that's where it needs to be paid for. We're too far behind and the capital isn't following.
We need to educate people, Belinda. I believe we need you and us and people like us. We need to educate people. People all the time they look for ESG, but they don't know what is ESG. And we need to really tell them what are ESG, and it's not ESG for, as you said, as a multi-billion company or a company like us with 10 or 20 million capitalization. But I believe education play a big role here in the world.
Well, I think that ESG is almost like health and safety. It has to be built into our DNA. It's not, and it's all very well. We're all in our nice offices or our living rooms and so on, talking about ESG. And the mining industry in general, for I'm not sure what reasons, always seems to get a bad rap. In my experience, I've probably spent over 40 years working in Africa, as well as visiting many other projects in countries around the world. In general, mid-tier major mining companies have been doing ESG as part of their DNA for decades. It's nice to talk about ESG in Canada or US or Australia, even Europe, but it's a different type of ESG that you would participate there versus developing and undeveloped countries around the world. And then obviously that ESG has to fit your pocket, and we all try our best to provide whatever we can out of our budgets, and some of us allocate a percentage of our overall budget for ESG as part of our our social a social responsibility in terms of an exploration and mining company. I've had 40 years of mining industry getting a bad rap. Yes, I've seen the photographs of child labor, but quite seriously, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in major mid-tier and even junior mining companies. Certainly, if they're listed on any international stock exchange, and ESG, if it's going to be monitored, needs to be monitored from a country perspective. So if Europe or the first world, US, Canada, and the rest of the first world wants to help the developing nations, it needs to help them in administration of proper environmental, social, community work, which is often in their laws, or it's within. I'm listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange, so it's within my mandate as a Canadian company to enact some of these processes. But I think that's where real ESG hits the ground. When you've got an exploration project or mine development project, and you do a needs assessment, you don't start with just building a hospital. You don't start with some educational facilities. You actually look at that community and you estimate what kind of benefit or what do they need to uplift themselves. Because you're a guest often in these countries, in these projects, and it's often good to be able to provide some uplifting. But that's very different in say Central Africa as opposed to the US or Canada or parts of Europe.
So, but I would also like to add something. So we are all talking about the end-use market of electric vehicles, and electric vehicle is something which transports an image. It transports also a clean image, and this is extremely important for the car industry. And if a clean car is produced with problematic minerals, or with minerals with a high CO2 footprint, for instance, then this is not acceptable for the car industry, and therefore this is part of your decision as a CEO. You can decide, I want to build up a mine with less strict ESG fulfillments, or I can build up a mine with highest standards, certified and so on. And I can guarantee you that if you have these highest standards and the OEMs will ask for it, then you can become a customer of the OEMs. And if you are not, you are out of the business. You can sell your stuff to China or something like this. So for me, ESG has a high priority. And in the companies I advise, I always recommend to take care about ESG.
Thank you, Martin. I love all the different points of view. I think that we have a good representation of the true market here. ESG was a very, very good topic. Since we have lithium experts in the house, I like lithium to be our next area of discussion here. In terms of lithium, we always hear, lithium brines is one of the forms typically coming from South America. We also have lithium pegmatite or hard rock, and we have other type of lithium deposits. I think that Martin, this is an area that you are quite conversant with, and I do even believe that there are geothermal brines, oil field brines, clay. Can you please enlighten us a bit about these types of deposits?
So maybe I would like to start with talking a little bit about the lithium market, because this is one of the fastest growing markets of all. And just to mention, from 21 to 22, we could see that about 70% more electric vehicles were sold in Europe, 200% more in the US, and 300% more EVs in China. So that means the market is growing extremely fast, and the supply needs to grow at the same rate. And this is, for me, the big challenge for the lithium industry as a whole. And every lithium resource that could provide battery-grade lithium is highly welcome and necessary. And therefore, it is desirable that we can bring new mines into operation, even from unconventional resources.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one very positive aspect of these unconventional resources is that they are in many cases located outside of the dominant source countries like Chile, China, or Australia. And so also from a geostrategic point of view, this is very important to bring them into operation. But now my fundamental concerns come into play here, because these resources have significantly lower lithium grades. And in any case, these unconventional resources require new or adapted technologies for extraction. So we know even from projects using standard technologies, even by very experienced companies, many of these projects failed. I just want to mention one example from this year. Tengi's lithium hydroxide project in Australia failed, simply failed. And now there are companies, they want to develop a lithium project from unconventional resources where you need to deploy new technologies. And these companies are not experienced in the lithium business. So this is even more risky to bring these mines into operation. And that's for me, that's the problem with these unconventional resources. On the one hand, the market is growing so fast. We need these every new lithium project we can bring into the market, even also from unconventional resources. But the technological risks are really very, very high. But we have to go that way, and we have to develop all these resources. When I'm saying this, I'm not pessimistic. I think in the long term, these new technologies will be successfully deployed. But this will take time. And the path will not be straight and will be marked by some setbacks, I guess. Or do you want to know more about the certain unconventional resources by itself? So
I can just pop in there and just maybe describe to the audience the different types of perhaps if we're going to stay on the lithium side, the different types of lithium deposits. So there are broadly three types. There's the salars, the lithium brine deposits that we find concentrated, unusually, but concentrated in the southern part of South America. And there's the famous lithium triangle, Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina. And so, you've got some very interesting countries there in terms of investment and modus operandi in terms of trade and relationships with the globe. By far the highest grade lithium deposits, I think, are in Chile and also in Bolivia. Bolivia has had its issues with foreign investment previously, and also Chile is one of those countries which is open for business internationally and has been for decades. And Argentina, there are low grade salar deposits. The salar deposits are basically brines which are pumped to surface and lithium extracted.
Sorry, I have to intervene here. So
yeah.
First of all, you are right. The best lithium resources in Chile, Salar de Atacama. But for instance, the grade in Bolivia is very low, and it is not such a great resource. And the lithium concentration in Argentina is not generally low. So there you can find new resources with low grades, but you have also resources with high grade. So Argentina is a very attractive country regarding the lithium resources.
Yeah, I'm talking not specifically and very generally. The other type of lithium deposits are hard rock. It's found in pegmatites. It's a hard rock, and pegmatite is a sort of like a volcanic rock, which has come from the depths of the earth. Usually found with tin, maybe niobium or tantalum. usually in sort of veins, sheeted veins, and lithium is usually found in minerals, largely spodumene, petalite, lepidolite, and so on. And these are found in Australia and certainly in Africa and probably most parts of the world. But those are the countries where, or those are the areas. Yeah, and the grade is these are generally smallish deposits. They're not the sort of size of the salars, but significantly they roughly produce around nearly half of the world's lithium. And then we've got the third type of deposit, which is this sort of a clay type. It's usually lower grade. It's found on surface. It's usually alteration of some rock, and the lithium mineral there is hectorite. And obviously the challenge in all of these processes is to extract, whether it's the salar, whether it's the hard rock, or whether it's the clay deposit, is to identify the lithium mineral or the lithium ion and find a method of extraction. And there starts the process. And fundamentally, grade is obviously important. The higher grade deposits usually win, but then also metallurgy is very important as well. So the ease and cost of extraction of the lithium from the concentrates produced from these types of deposits. Anything to do with strategic, I'd leave to government, and I don't see many governments really providing incentives to companies to then explore for these deposits. So there's a lot of talk, strategic and critical and so on, but until the government start putting money on the table to enhance the exploration of these types of deposits, then it's really markets that govern our exploration and development. Other than perhaps in China, where obviously the government's involved to a very great extent in companies and securing relations and assets around the world for commodities that it sees as strategic, and certainly the battery metals are strategic for China.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. There is two areas that I'd like to kind of dig deeper. One is in terms of the chemistry that you, Tony, mentioned. Where do we see this chemistry and the new technologies that, Martin, you were talking about for lithium extraction? Where do we see this going? Is there an advancement in terms of these technologies?
Well, what should I say? So yes, there are many technologies under development, and it is also necessary to have these new technologies. For instance, the solar evaporation process for brine is suitable for high lithium concentrations. If you go down to, let's say, 200 ppm or something like that, then you cannot extract lithium out of it with solar evaporation. So therefore, you need a different process. And this is where, for instance, the DLE process comes into play. So it is, if you want to meet the ever-growing demand, we need to have these new technologies in order to extract lithium even from these not so prominent resources. And therefore, we can see many developments, but the problem is, and this is not an issue, it's a problem, these technologies are not fully developed. So the potential deployment will always be at risk. And this will be important to see the first companies which want to use these technologies in commercial scale, how they will perform.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Anybody else want to add anything before we move on? Perfect. So I think that's the end of the lithium area. We're reaching to the end, and I'd like to start drawing some conclusions here. One of the first ones that I wanted to talk about is the opportunities. I like to be positive, me. And I always like to throw the opportunity over there. So, Belinda, in your view, what do you think are the opportunity for investors in this case, in terms of the battery metals within the junior mining operators?
I think it's an unprecedented opportunity. I think especially as a Canadian, having all 31 critical minerals in quite some abundance, in fact, in our country, it's an unprecedented opportunity to come in early, particularly now as us Canadians and others are looking at a technical recession in Q1, Q2, so valuations are down. To invest in early stage companies that are building a responsible approach to a stockpile of graphite, as an example, when there is no production in the US except for one mine 100 kilometers north of us that's running out of ore. It's as if you're looking at the 1950s and the Seven Sisters, the oil companies went abroad to secure cheap oil in the Middle East. We're now reframing the narrative. We are in a period of disruption. Now is when you need to be investing your capital into companies that can really find that path to production by having a great asset that you develop in the context of that community. And that's really what L'Amico Metals is doing. We're going to develop that natural flake graphite project from PEA to PFS. We just raised some money. It was oversubscribed, but still looking for more capital from investors that can see that in a period of disruption, this is when you place your bet. And if you believe that we are in an energy transition, moving away from fossil fuels completely, potentially, as Tony mentioned, you have to put your money into graphite and lithium and cobalt. Nickel is more available, but graphite, the alternative, synthetic, is not a greenhouse gas reducing product, highly emissions intensive. So I feel strongly about the opportunity right now, and particularly in Canada.
Excellent. I'm going to extend the question to the rest of the panel.
Maybe if I can just continue to Belinda. I fully agree with what she said. Obviously, I would transport that to Europe, if you allow me, Belinda. Europe has all these metals, has all these minerals available. It's sad that everything is we can extract that in Europe, in a great continent, but then we need to ship into Canada, to the US, to China, to processing these metals and these minerals. It's sad that Europe has a lack of refineries and processing factories, and Belinda's countries, so that the US, so that China is taking advantage of that. And I believe it's a great opportunity for investors to invest now in junior mining companies in Europe. Sorry, Belinda. And for example, Belinda just made the example of graphite in Canada, but for example, in Europe, we have the case of manganese, that only one country in the European Union or the European continent has a production of manganese, and it's Serbia. So the small country like Serbia is just the only European country that is producing manganese. And it's a lack of manganese worldwide. And this Serbia mine need to ship everything to China. And it's in the hands of the Chinese people and the Chinese government to squeeze the whole wall with manganese products and chips from the EV or the panels or the whatever. So I believe governments, not only investors, I believe the governments need to realize how important are junior miners, as Tony mentioned at the beginning. I believe that investors and funds need to change the policies and the views, and to look more in miners like us, all of us, that we are put a lot of effort and a lot of expertise and than we have, and even that we are small companies like us, I believe that all of us will have a great opportunity and great experience behind us. And I believe that all of us, we can do it, and we can make Canada, US, Europe to be independent from China or from other countries that maybe are not complying with the standards that maybe US, Canada, or the European Union are expecting when it's come to the metals. So I believe it's a great opportunity for all of us.
Very good. if nobody else wants to continue on that, I've got another one for you. I'm gonna try.
Hang on, I've not finished yet. So I think, so for me, these battery metals, the critical metals and so on, it's boom or bust. You've got a process historically which has lasted, a boom time of 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, then a bust time and all the prices go down, and then a boom again. Because technology is like that, it changes. We have certain things in demand. So, we saw a boom of rare earths, a bust of rare earths, 2010, 11, 12, boom, and then bust. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, we started to see it rise again. We saw the same in lithium. It was an upturn, and then all the projects disappeared. So the issue is there's a mismatch between that cycle that we've seen, and we've seen different commodity cycles. Different commodities have different cycles, and unfortunately, the issue is that in terms of discovering a deposit, it could take between 1 and 5 years, and then to develop and produce a feasibility study on that is another 2 or 3 years to 10 years. So this is a long-term process. Fundamentals of any project are in general still the same rules that have lasted for millennia. That's high grade, large, at surface, so easy to mine, simple metallurgy, low costs, low operating costs, low capital costs. Those are going to be the winners, and then you can overlay that in jurisdiction. So those are still the rules, but we've got this overlay of boom and bust, and we've got the period of lag between discovery and development.
Excellent.
But this is a time when geologists should be really excited, because if you've got a treasure trove of projects that you've looked at in the past that had high, say, lithium, but you were looking for tin and the tin grade was low, or you had low niobium tantalum, but it had high lithium, but the lithium price was low, and so you never developed. And also, the adage of some of the major companies, when you're looking for gold, or when you're looking for copper, or when you're looking for some major metals, take special precaution and just analyze for some of the minor metals and just see whether there's any big spikes. And then have a look at your tailings dams, have a look at your ash heaps, have a look at the residuals of mining and industrial process. And don't forget, there's some clever scientists out there who are going to find a way of releasing these metals such as lithium from scrap, from seawater, desalination plants, from all sorts of other processes. So, it's an exciting time, but it's a very changeable time as far as I can see.
Can I just make one comment on what Tony was saying about the geologists and how exciting it is? There is a real need for students and young people to choose geology as a career. We are missing geologists across all of these minerals in Quebec and in Canada. And there are those that are retiring, and there's a gap. And if we can encourage, the people in this panel and everybody in this industry, for young people to choose careers in geology and mine engineering and metallurgy, it's a guaranteed job and it's a real issue. So we need expertise to develop these projects. So that's an opportunity.
Indeed, and that touches deeply my area of expertise, people and talent. And I actually think that we have a job to do when it comes to education. I think Roberto mentioned it before, but that goes into the industry, making the industry attractive to young, boys and girls to study geology or engineering and so on. So that, I think that's a task for us. To conclude, I'd really like to put out there, what do you see as the future of these battery metals? What can we get the crystal ball out there, Marty, maybe?
So I would like to talk about lithium, because I am most familiar with that. All the new battery technologies we will see in the future will be lithium based. whether it will be solid state as a next big cycle or advanced lithium-ion batteries. So I'm very optimistic that the lithium boom will last very, very long, at least until the middle of the next decade. And I'm absolutely optimistic in this case.
I like your optimism.
Yeah.
Tony, where do you see the future?
No, yeah, I'm a geologist, so I'm optimistic even in the darkest times. So, I'm optimistic. The planet is growing. When I was a kid in my street, 100 houses, probably 5 cars. Now every home has got like 2 or 3 cars outside. The world's becoming more populated. The need for technology is greater. So supply is still going to be required for the huge demand we can see, certainly in this green technology, the battery technology, the new world as we see it. It's a very changeable world, but it's going to grow.
Good. I think that Roberto, you would like
No,
to...
just I want just to finalize like I start, and I believe the mining industry is we need this world, this green energy, this electrification, and all of us we need the mine industry. Without the mine industries will not happen. That's clear, and I believe we are in the most attractive and exciting mining. So all of us we are working. Definitely, in my opinion, in the most exciting industry that we have now at the end of this year. Yeah, definitely.
I think you could argue that everybody here wakes up every day in the future. I mean, that's
exactly.
There's 700 gigawatts of capacity coming online in the United States. So the future is today. It's how do we feed, and they're all lithium-ion based batteries. So how do we feed that hungry machinery?
Exactly. Thank you, Paloma. This has been a great opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Belinda. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and thank you for participating. Thank you, everybody that is listening. Hopefully, we kind of set good expectations there.